let us see what are the major contributors to the CPI combined, right? So the major contributors or the drivers to the CPI combined during 2019-20, the food and beverages was the main contributor. Among the food and beverages, the inflation in the vegetables and the pulses was particularly high due to low base effect and production side disruptions like untimely rain. So these production side disruptions, they reduce the supply. For example, because of untimely rain, when crop is destroyed, because of untimely rain, when crop is destroyed, then the supply comes down and demand does not come down immediately. So demand remains high but supply comes down, so ultimately leading to the inflation. What is the meaning of low base effect? What is the meaning of low base effect? Right? And before that, we need to understand what is the meaning of base effect. So now let us understand the meaning of base effect. I hope you remember the concept of base year, which we discussed in the starting of the session itself. So the base year acted as the reference period for calculation of the price index. And I hope you remember how to measure the inflation. The measurement of inflation is basically done by calculating the percentage change in the price index compared to the reference time. Reference period is normally the previous year. So for example, we have to calculate the inflation during 2019-20. For this calculation, we will see the price index of 2018-19. So this will be the reference period, right? And this will act as a base for calculation of inflation during 2019-20. So when we calculate the inflation for the 19-20, we basically take the current year price index and we reduce the previous year price index and divide by the previous year price index. So this previous year price index act as the base for calculation of current year rate of inflation. Now, in case of vegetables and pulses, these two are the food items. That means they are quite volatile. So there can be sudden increase in price or sudden decrease in price. So because of the seasonal variations, there can be sudden increase or sudden decrease in the prices of vegetables and pulses. And because of this sudden seasonal variations, this base of the previous year can come down suddenly or it can increase suddenly, right? So for example, if during the previous year there is untimely rain, the supply is reduced, that means the price is increased, and prices increase suddenly for a particular season. So this base will increase, and because of this increase in the base, when we see mathematically, this rate of inflation will come down. And in a reverse situation, if last year there is good production, the rate of inflation remains stable, in that case this base year will be low, this base figure will be low, and rate of inflation will increase, right? So base effect is basically the distortion in the monthly inflation figure. You can write down if you want to write down. So base effect basically means the distortion in the monthly inflation figure which is caused by the short-term variation because of seasonal and other reasons caused in the reference period, right? So it is the distortion in the monthly inflation figures because of the sudden rise or decline in the prices which have been caused because of the seasonal and other reasons. So this is the meaning of base effect. So coming back to the discussion, among food and beverages, inflation in the vegetables and pulses was particularly high due to low base effect and production side disruptions like untimely rain. So there was low base effect. That means this base was comparatively low, right? So this base was comparatively low. This base being low, the rate of inflation was supposed to be high, right? So this rate of inflation was supposed to be high. I hope this concept of base effect is clear. This concept of base effect has already been asked in the UPSC. So please be careful. Please understand this carefully. Now, cobweb phenomenon. So let us understand this concept. This concept is uniquely associated with this year's economic survey. So this is one of the very unique concepts which you would hardly ever heard about. So what is cobweb phenomena? Suppose, for example, we take the example of pulses. So there are multiple years, 2019, 2018 and 2020. In 2020, the market price of pulses are high, right? Because the market prices are high, so the farmers who are taking the sowing decision for the next year, who are thinking that which crop to cultivate in the next year between 2018 to 2019, they will prefer the pulses. So they will produce pulses during this season because they can see that market prices of the pulses are high during 2018. So between 2017 and 18, the market prices have been quite high. So they are expecting that these prices will remain high. Therefore, they produce the pulses in expectation of the high prices. Now, when more and more number of farmers start producing the same crop, suddenly the supply becomes very high. When supply becomes very high and the demand do not increase suddenly. So supply is high, demand is low. Consequently, the prices will fall. So in at the starting of 2019, the prices will fall. Now, for the next year, when farmers are taking the decision that which crop to cultivate in the next year, they see that prices are falling as far as pulses are concerned. They start thinking that okay, now let us stop producing the pulses. Let us focus on the other crops. So they stop the cultivation of pulses, and by the end of 2020, the prices of the pulses again increase. Why the price increase? Because the production and supply is decreasing. The supply is decreasing and the demand remains same. So because supply is less, demand is high, so price start increasing. So at this point, the prices increase, right? So one thing you can observe in this entire discussion is very clear, that because of the price fluctuation in the previous marketing period, the decision of the farmers has been changing. So that the farmers have been taking their decision regarding which crop to cultivate based upon the production that they did in the previous year, based upon the market prices of the crop in the previous year, right? And this price fluctuation year after year have been deciding the production also, and this production is deciding the prices also. So this high and low prices which are happening because the production is based upon the price decision, the price scenario, this concept is called CoOp phenomena. If we talk about this year, in the last 1 year, the prices of pulses have been affected by this CoOp phenomena. Now let us see. So in agricultural market, the supply reacts to the price, right? So supply reacts. Why the supply reacts? Because the production decision is based upon the pricing prevailing in the previous marketing period with a lag of one time period. So we saw that if the price in the current year is high, the production in the next year will be high and price will come down. So one time period lag is there, 1 year lag is there, because supply decisions take time to implement. This is known as CoOp phenomenon. Thus, at the time of beginning of this year's planting of crop, farmers are influenced by the prices prevailing in the last year. So this is the CoOp phenomena. So in this year's economic survey, this CoOp phenomena has been indicated regarding the WPI inflation in case of the pulses. So in case of pulses, this WPI inflation rate from April 2012 to December 2019, over a period of 7 to 8 years, we can see there are extreme of prices. So here the prices are very high. Now based upon this price, farmers start producing more pulses. So supply increases, demand do not decrease suddenly. Demand do not increase suddenly. So ultimately the prices come down. When the prices come down, again the farmers stop producing the pulses. Supply goes down, demand remains same, and prices go up and again, right? So in the current year, the increase in the prices of pulses is attributed to the CoOp phenomenon. So this is the meaning of CoOp phenomenon. The presence of peaks, right? So these are the peaks, might indicate towards the presence of CoOp phenomena in the pulses. Now this is the language given in the economic survey. CoOp phenomena for the pulses. CoOp theory is the idea that price fluctuations can lead to fluctuations in the supply, which cause a cycle of rising and the falling prices, right? So we can see in the pulses there is a cycle of rising and falling, rising and ultimately falling prices. So there is a cycle. The farmers base their sowing decision or cultivation decision on prices witnessed in the previous marketing period. So if the prices in the last year are high, they tend to produce more goods. That increases their supply, which leads to further decrease in the price in the next period. Now, how to protect? So this is the suggestion given by the economic survey. How to protect the farmers from this CoOp phenomena? Because this instability in the prices adversely affect the consumer as well as the farmers. How to protect? To protect against it, the measures to safeguard the farmers, like procurement under price stabilization scheme. So this price stabilization fund is given to control the prices of the essential commodities. Under this fund, the government procures the material, the perishable crops at a certain minimum price, and it sells the same crop, same production, same agricultural commodities like tomato, onion, etc. at low price to the consumer, so that the farmer as well as consumer both are unaffected by the CoOp phenomena. Minimum support price. So minimum support price is also required. So this price stabilization fund and minimum support price, they need to be more effective. If they are more effective, in that case, even if because of CoOp phenomena, when prices are coming down, still the farmers will be getting farmers will get good remuneration and they will keep producing the pulses, and when they keep producing the pulses, then in the next year there will be no shortage of pulses and the prices will not increase, right? So we can see, by virtue of price stabilization fund and minimum support price, we can safeguard the farmers from the adverse effects of CoOp web phenomena. Now, divergence between retail and wholesale price. So we have already seen that there is a divergence between the retail and the wholesale prices. This is observed more for essential agricultural commodities in 4 metropolitan cities of the country, and divergence is particularly high for the vegetables like onion and tomato. So these are the perishable crops and essential also. So this may be due to the presence of intermediaries and the high transaction cost. So we have already seen this in the previous discussion, that when the prices are moving, when the production is moving from wholesale to the retail level, then there is transportation cost, storage cost, middleman profit, taxes, brokerage, etc. So because of that, there is a divergence between the retail and the wholesale prices. Now, volatility of prices. The volatility of prices for most of the essential food commodities, with the exception of some of the pulses. So in case of pulses, the volatility is high, but for rest of the item, the volatility has come down in the period 2014-19 as compared to the period of 2019-14, right? So if you compare two periods, in the last 5 years, the volatility has come down. Lower volatility might indicate the presence of, so why there is a lower volatility? Because of better marketing channels. So we have amended the Agricultural Produce Marketing Committee Act, amended APMC Act, under which we have allowed the direct marketing, we have allowed electronic national agricultural marketing, which is a web platform where the buyers and sellers of agricultural commodities, they come together and they negotiate at a national level. So these marketing channels have been improving. Storage facilities, for example, cold chains. Third, effective MSP system. So on the recommendation of the NITI Aayog, we have been improving the MSP system. Now, regional variations. So CPIC inflation has been highly variable across the state, ranging between -0.04% to 8.1% across the state or UTs in the financial year 1920, right? And if we see what are the major contributors to the CPIC inflation, so this is the current year and this is the previous year, last 1 year, right? So in the current year, the food and beverages are the main contributor. So you can see this blue box represents food and beverages. In the last year, housing was one of the major contributor. In the current year, housing is a less contributor. So you can see that in the current year, food and beverages are the main contributors. Now CPI rural and CPI urban. So as I told you, as of now, in the new series, CPI urban, CPI rural and CPI combined is calculated. All these figures are given by the National Statistical Office, which is under the Ministry of Statistics and the program implementation. And if we see regional variation in the rural and the urban, so in most states, CPI inflation in the rural areas is lower than the CPI inflation in the urban areas. And can you guess why this is happening? Can you use your guess why this is happening? So in the rural areas, the food inflation is less because the production is happening in the local area and the consumer can buy directly from the farmers, or in most of the cases they themselves are the producers. So there is very less presence of the middleman. Because of that, the food inflation tends to be low, and food inflation is almost 45% of the total CPI inflation, right? So ultimately the CPI inflation in the rural areas remains low. So this is the one reason. The one reason is absence of the middleman. The second reason is that the demand in the rural areas has been low because of the low level of income. The rural wages of the people have been stable. They are not increasing. So because the income of the people is not increasing, their purchasing power is not increasing, the demand is not increasing, and ultimately the prices do not increase, right? So ultimately there are two reasons. One is no middleman or very less middleman, and second, not much increase in the income of the rural people. Because of these two reasons, the rural areas inflation remains low as compared to the urban inflation. Now, what are the reasons of divergence in the retail and wholesale prices of the essential commodities? So we have already seen the reasons can be high transaction cost, for example, the transportation cost, the brokerage cost, etc. Weak infrastructure and information system, so storage facilities, etc. Poor marketing facilities and huge margins of the middleman. This discussion we have already done in the starting of the session itself. Now, what are the measures which have been taken to contain the price rise of the essential commodities, especially the onions? So what are the price control measures taken for the onions? The first is building of the buffer stock of onion. So buffer stock is basically the extra stock which has been created specifically to deal with the emergency situation when supply of the crop decreases suddenly. So in that case, the crop is withdrawn from the buffer stock and supplied to the consumers. So buffer stock of onion was created under the price stabilization fund, which was distributed to the various state government, right? So the onions from this buffer stock were distributed to the various state government and they further distributed to the consumers. Number two, the benefit to exporters of onions under the merchandise export from India scheme. So this merchandise export from India scheme, this is a scheme of the government to promote the exporters. But in case of onion, to control the outflow from the India, to control the decrease in supply, to maintain the presence of pulses in the presence of onions in the India itself, this benefit given to the exporter was reduced so that the exporters are discouraged from exporting the onion from the country to outside. Third, minimum export price was imposed on onion and subsequently its export was banned. So minimum export price ensures that no one export the onion below a certain price, and this price is kept at a very high level so that there is discouragement to the buyer outside India from buying the goods from India. Next, government imposed stock limits on the traders, so to avoid hoardings. The upper stock limit were imposed. Next, the government facilitated private imports of onions by relaxing its fumigation norms. These fumigation norms are regarding the quality, the phytosanitary measures. It is part of the phytosanitary measures, and exempting importers from the stock limit. So importers can import and they can have any amount of stock from the import. Number 5, government imported onions through MMTC from countries like Egypt and Turkey. So normally such kind of import is not done, but this time Egypt and Turkey, these two countries have been there. So in the prelims examination they can ask a question that from which country India is importing the onions. So if they give the option of Egypt and Turkey, then this is right. So please be aware, in the prelims examination they can ask this type of question. Now, distribution of CPIC inflation from 2012-13 to 2019-20. So you can see there is a shift in the dynamics of inflation. So in the 12-13, around 7-8 years ago, the rate of CPIC used to be in the double digit, approximately 10%. In 14-15, there was sudden slowdown, and after 14-15, there have been consistent decline. They have been consistent decline. So after witnessing high levels of inflation during the 2012-13, CPIC inflation fell in 2013-14 and witnessed a drastic fall from 14-15 onwards. So this is one of the achievement of the government, and one of the contributing reasons has been the decrease in the prices of the imported crude oil. Now, the analysis for monthly CPIC inflation data between January 12 to November 19 shows that there is an evidence of strong reversion of headline inflation to core inflation. That means the headline inflation is converging with the core inflation. The headline inflation is converging with the core inflation, right? Headline inflation is converging with the core inflation. Why is that? Because one of the major component of headline inflation used to be the food and energy, right, which are not part of the core, and because of the decrease in the prices of crude oil, the energy prices have been comparatively low. Similarly, the food inflation has been under control. So because of control in the food and energy inflation, there has been the movement of headline inflation towards the core inflation. The headline inflation has been becoming quite stable over a period of time. So this is one of the very good thing. This is one of the achievement which we can see in case of India. Now let us start the MCQs.